Tony here again. My second class of the day, or session of the day, was At 2030, A Path to High Performance and Urban Transformation. This was my favorite class of the day. It was awesome. All three of the speakers knew just a massive amount of what they were talking about. They were involved in the project, and I took about a page and a half of notes. I'm going to basically just go through my notes real quick, kind of read off big key factors, and comment as I go. Basically, this is a project led by business owners, community members, city officials, contractors, property owners, basically to make this urban transformation project happen. It's to transform urban districts into high-performance districts and cities. One statistic they gave that I found kind of fascinating, that 47% of the CO2 emissions comes from our buildings, which it's a large number that I feel like easily could be reduced. And he mentioned, one of the speakers mentioned, that the biggest factor affecting the bottom line is energy consumption, which our whole movement is basically pushing for lower energy consumption, and I still feel like we could do a lot better of a job in all of our office buildings and our schools. And that's really what this project is about, is to take those high energy consuming buildings and basically get them in a pact, in this district to really push for lower energy consumption and reduced water usage and reduced CO2 emissions from transportation to and from these buildings. Another statistic they gave was that there's a huge concentration of density in these cities of these CO2 emissions, and that 50% of people live in cities today, and by 2030 they expect about 70% of people to live in cities, which is another reason why they started this project, and it's actually active in Seattle and Cleveland. Those are two of the case studies they talked about and expound upon. Another fact that I found very interesting was, he said that to make this happen, to make the needle move, we don't need to be focusing on cities or groups or anything or people. We need to be focusing on markets, different markets. So I'm in the construction field, so I need to focus on construction, and then from construction it will move into the different fields and really just be kind of like a ripple effect, and that businesses look for environmentally efficient cities, and that the more environmentally efficient cities we have, such as Seattle, such as Cleveland, such as San Francisco, the more successful businesses will want to be there, because they will be more successful in these environmentally friendly cities, or environmentally efficient cities, and thus making it more competitive, thus making our economy grow. One of the things that I've heard in a couple of my sessions today was that you shouldn't try to change the existing things. You should go in and make new things. To instead of changing it, just rebuild it and make it right, instead of the inefficient, or make it efficient instead of the inefficient ways that they are already in place. And the 2030 challenge is to reach carbon neutrality in districts by 2030, while also reducing 50% of water consumption and reducing 50% of CO2 emissions from transportation. And for existing buildings, to a 50% reduction in energy, water, and CO2 emissions due to transportation. So this is it's an awesome goal, and I think that it's very much achievable in these districts And once these little districts begin to show success in this movement, that I definitely feel like it could grow, and it could become entire cities, and then entire states, and then entire countries. And I definitely feel like this could have just a big ripple effect in the future once it's established and all the kinks have been worked out, and everything like that. They utilize an online dashboard that tracks how much energy, water, and CO2 emissions have been reduced, and where they are currently, their ongoing status, the play-by-play, if you will, of their reduction, and energy reduction, and water reduction, and CO2 reduction. And it utilizes this dashboard to compare one building in the district to another building, maybe their neighbor, maybe their competitor, and that way it fuels this need for competitive advantage, and really to get everybody involved, trying to move this needle to reduce in energy and water and CO2 emissions. The 2030 district vision there were 3 prongs for this vision. The first one was economic development. The second one was rebranding of a city, and the third was repurposing of the existing infrastructure. And economic development, they're saying that the more environmentally efficient cities there are, the more competitive the businesses will be for wanting to move there. So the more innovators and different entrepreneurs will want to be in your city because of this. The rebranding of a city, obviously in Jacksonville we don't have the best sustainable image, so the rebranding would be to get these districts going and kind of spin the sustainable aspect of our city and make it sustainable Jacksonville. That's what we would be known as. The repurposing of the existing infrastructure is to, instead of building another road to get to another building, utilizing the roads that are already there to get there, and as well as underground utilities, electrical utilities, and so on and so forth. And one of the case studies they talked about was the Bullitt Center, which is in Seattle, and it's one of the greenest office buildings in the world. It was very fascinating how it's one of the tallest, I believe, buildings, green buildings in the world too. And then next they wrapped it up with talking about consolidating square footage, and how they were in these eco districts, if you will, they were trying to consolidate the square footage. So I believe one of them was Progressive, that they gave a case study on, where they had one building where they operated out of, and it was enormous, and they had a lot of wasted space, a lot of overly large offices. And what they did was they consolidated the square footage. So they took up, instead of 80,000 square feet, they ended up taking 40,000 square feet, or whatever the square footage numbers were. And they found it increased the productivity and efficiency of the workers. That reducing the amount of free space they had actually increased productivity, which I thought was a very interesting statistic. Overall, this was, like I said, one of my favorite classes of the day. Very informative, and I definitely feel like Jacksonville, with our with all of our movements and ideas that we have, we can definitely probably implement this easily in Jacksonville and try to just really become that sustainable destination, that green destination, and work towards just getting to this point of carbon neutrality in Jacksonville. And that's it. Thank you.